Thank you for joining me this afternoon. Several things have come to the surface this past week that I would like to share with you and to talk about, as well as give you some firsthand information about some of the city projects currently underway by our city engineer, Eric Klon. Yet with only one verified case of COVID-19 in Crook County, I know people are getting discouraged about the isolation mandates still in place and the business closures. We are actually reducing the spread of virus. People are beginning to question the extreme financial impacts, saying that staying home has on our economy, and asking if the benefit is worth the cost. This is not the first such an experience. In 1918, the world was hit by the Spanish flu. It affected 500 million people. That at the time was 1/4 of the world's population. During that time, between January 1st of 1918 and December of 1920, let's get this square. 1918 to 1920, from January through December, 50 million people died. The town of Astoria closed for a period of time, actually saving a number of lives by limiting the spread of virus. So this is a first for us, but it's not an unprecedented event. Unemployment. Unfortunately, there are many people in town who are now unemployed because the state mandated shutdowns. Painful as it is reality. None of us wanted to be there, and certainly it isn't because of poor work performance. It is because of the need to keep people separated and not risk the spread of COVID-19. I received an email from a resident in town who was extremely exasperated. I could say something more, but not on live public airways. He had tried calling Oregon State Unemployment Division for 2.5 weeks, and finally, the beginning of this week, he got through, but then was put on hold for 2.5 hours, at which time his call was cut off. To say that he was frustrated is a gross understatement. He is now, as a result of multiple phone calls from the city, from City Hall to the state, we were able to make the necessary contacts, and he is making progress after those phone calls. None of us should have to experience that sort of frustration. Government is here and ought to be here to serve you and take care of you. I visited with our state representative, Vicki Brees Iverson, and she shared these contacts for better unemployment benefit access. So they're on your screen right now. OED COVID-19 info@oregon.gov and OED UI info@oregon.gov. So if you have needs to contact the state for unemployment benefits, this is the route that would give you the best access. Everyone is frustrated, and frustration continues to mount with social distancing and isolation. However, these restrictions are mandated from the governor's declaration at the state level. Locally, we have not imposed any additional restrictions, nor do we plan to. The city is adhering to the same restrictions the governor has mandated. Yesterday, I heard there are plans being laid out over the next 2 weeks for outlining the process for lifting the restrictions. They will be, in all likelihood, a gradual reduction of those restrictions. All of these, again, will come from the governor's office. If you're angry and want to channel frustration, do it in a productive, positive direction by supporting health efforts, blood drives, building up rather than tearing down. Small businesses in our community and owner-run businesses have been severely impacted. You can support them now by purchasing gift cards and ordering takeout. Remember them when the restrictions are lifted. Small businesses are the heart of the American economy. They are also the stores and other businesses that support and sponsor local events, Little League, outdoor activities, our annual rodeo, local hospital. They are our community. Local owners are reeling from the impacts of the shutdown, and they need to know that we will be there for them, supporting them when the restrictions are lifted. Workers in retail, hospitality, and restaurant industries are particularly hard hit. The National Restaurant Association expects the total restaurant industry losses to exceed $225 billion. Almost 60% of the job losses so far come from the restaurant workers. The city has been working with the local leaders from the Chamber of Commerce, the county, EDCO, Facebook, the Downtown Association, Representative Brees Iverson, Crook County Health, COIC, to form a COVID-19 Business Assistance Task Force. This group was formed to determine the priority needs and provide assistance to businesses in Crook County adversely impacted by COVID-19. One of our city employees, Casey Kaiser, who works in planning, as well as city manager Steve Forrester, and I have been working with this group over the last few weeks. We will be forwarding the council a staff report and recommendations outlining the process and asking for funding support from the city. The city finance director, Liz Schutte, has been consulted and has provided some funding availability options for council consideration. We will have this ask on the agenda at our April 28th council meeting. The city is partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to survey businesses on the impact of this emergency, and this data can inform future budgets and the city as the city approaches state and federal advocacy. Please help by participating in the survey. And while I prepared this yesterday, about 20 minutes ago, I received a press release dealing with this very subject. And this is for immediate release, so it's not in the newspaper, it just came in. Crook County COVID-19 Task Force awards local businesses $179,950 in grants with additional funds available. Prineville, Oregon. Crook County COVID-19 Business Assistance Task Force was formed to help local companies deal with coronavirus economic impacts affecting daily business operations and provide technical assistance for federal programs previously available. After approving applications from over 100 Crook County businesses and sole proprietors, $179,950 will be distributed in grant funds beginning early next week. Industries impacted and awarded include construction, manufacturing, wholesale trade, transportation and warehousing, real estate and leasing services, professional and technical services, business administration services, educational services, healthcare, arts, entertainment, and recreation, accommodation and food services, and miscellaneous services and event sectors. Funds were provided by Prineville, Crook County, the Chamber of Commerce, the county itself, the city of Prineville, the Prineville Downtown Association, and Facebook's data center in Prineville. Facebook has been an incredible community partner in contributing $200,000 to this local grant fund, as well as an additional $175,000 corporate grant fund to become available in the next couple of weeks for Crook County businesses. All funding amounts were determined with a numerical scoring matrix based on application data presented by the business applicants. Applications were released on April 7th and will be closing as soon as remaining funds are distributed. There are still funds available on a first-come, first-served basis up to an amount of $2,500. Although the Prineville Crook County Chamber is designated fiscal agent for the fund, applicants do not need to be members of the chamber to apply. The information about application for the business grants is on the screen as we speak. So thank you, the task force, and thank you, Facebook, for your contributions to our community. Moving on to late fees. For community members and businesses with little or no revenue, the prospect of paying utilities or late fees poses a significant burden. Any late fees caused as a result of this emergency will be eligible for future credit. On to frontline workers. There is no better way to confront times of hardship and sacrifice than to look to those who rise to the challenge. We can honor them by recognizing their contributions and saying thank you. There are so many people in public service and public health that we can applaud and be proud of today for putting their health and safety at risk to protect the common good. This is a challenging time for all frontline workers. I understand the anxiety for you and your families face. I have 2 daughters who are nurses, and I was a pharmacist, now retired. I understand how challenging it is to step up and help people who may be affected with a communicable disease, especially now with one for which there is no cure or vaccine. We ask you to stand with us in solidarity and continue to help flatten the curve by staying at home. Our efforts of self-isolation will reduce the spread of the disease. It will not provide a cure, but it will reduce the risk of overburdening our health care system. The availability of hospital beds, the specialty equipment needed, as well as staff exhausted from having to work too many shifts because they are covering for fellow workers who are off at home recovering. Both of my daughters are working extra shifts because some of their fellow nurses are home recovering as well. There are many stories, and there will be many more. Thank you, all of you who donated blood. Remember to make an appointment rather than just showing up because they can't take walk-ins. The Red Cross announced they have a new program for those people who have developed COVID-19 antibodies. If you are one of those, please contact the Red Cross for additional information. We know that more testing is needed. Yes, we know we have only 1 confirmed case in Crook County. However, there are a number of cases in Central Oregon, and there is a whole lot of car traffic between Prineville and Bend and Redmond and Sisters and Madras. There are a lot of cases here in the region, and with limited testing, we just don't have verification of those numbers. More testing is coming. A message from our local hospital. If you need emergency room care, don't delay. There are far more issues than COVID-19. I understand that there are several people in Central Oregon who waited too long and were not able to survive. The hospital is there for all of our medical needs, emergency needs, severe illness, in addition to the coronavirus. If you need to get to the emergency room, don't wait, please go. To a more enjoyable subject, I want to introduce Eric Klon, our city engineer, who oversees our Public Works Department. Eric was raised in Prineville, graduated from Crook County High School, and then graduated from Oregon State in mechanical engineering. He has worked for the city for about 11 years. Is that correct, Eric? About 11 years, give or take?
13 years, actually.
13 years.
13 years.
Seems like yesterday. He's responsible for about $45 million worth of infrastructure projects, including $17 million in grants received by the city. Thanks, Eric, for your efforts. I have asked Eric to join me to provide a history and some updates on a few of the projects in Prineville. And I'm going to start with Barnes Butte. But by the way, Eric, my wife Jan and I walked Barnes Butte Trail today, and it's a delight to be able to walk in that open air and area. But what would you like to share with us about the Barnes Butte Recreation Area?
Yeah, I'd just like to provide a short history, why the city bought it, how we bought it, and what our plans are for it as we move forward. So it's wonderful that we have all of this open space in front of our community. I have a slide here that shows the extents of the property. So in 2015, the idea was floated to the city council, to purchase 460 acres. There's 160 acres of BLM that encompasses the top of the butte. So we now have access to 620 acres of open space within our city limits in UGB. So how did we do this? It was a long, arduous task to be able to secure the funding when we were first proposed with the possibility. The mines had not been cleaned up yet. So for those of you that have walked up to the top of the butte, there's two different cinnabar mines. They were short time in the 1930s. They were used to mine cinnabar for mercury, but all the tailings had been left. So over the course of 2 years it took us, we worked with the property owner. They got it cleaned up. We got a no further action letter from DEQ, and in early January 2017 we were able to purchase the property. Next, we have a short drone video of the property that just shows how beautiful it is. This video was from fall of 17, when we did some of our grand opening events. We've really just been pushing to get our community out there and using it. I've been up there a few times in the last couple of weeks, and I'm very, very happy to see how much it's being used. So why did the city buy this? How did we buy it? What dollars did we use? The 460 acres came with about 305 acres of water rights. And so we were able to use our water SDC dollars. So SDC is a system development charge. So if we were to shut the doors to Prineville today, we wouldn't need any more water, but we can't do that. And so when people come to town, we charge a system development charge for water, wastewater, streets. And the reason we do that is just to ensure that the existing customers aren't paying for new customers. Our existing customers aren't paying for the data centers, things like that. So those water rights and being able to use our water system development charges really paid for the property. We also use some transportation SDC dollars for some future road extensions. But those water rights are going to allow us to serve up to 4,000 people in the future. So it was just a wonderful opportunity. The land was really just the icing on the cake. By purchasing this, we're not going to be at odds with farmers trying to strip water rights off of valuable agricultural land. So it worked out really, really well. Another wonderful thing about this piece of property is its proximity to Barnes Butte Elementary. We really enjoy supporting our schools, and as you'll see in the next slide or the next video, for our grand opening event, we had all of the kids from Barnes Butte Elementary come up. So that was almost 700 people with the staff. And in our first B here, we have all of our kinder and first graders. The second B is our second and third graders. And then the E is our fourth and fifth graders. So they all came up. They've been really wonderful about helping us develop the property, or in another way, not develop it. Last year, we had all of our first graders become local planners that were going to help us determine how we should develop the property, and it worked out well. So there you can see all 700 kids yelling at the camera. Our photo here, you can see one thing I didn't think about is a kindergartner takes up quite a bit less space than a fifth grader. So my first B is pretty empty and my E got pretty full, but it's been wonderful. They've been helping us get in front of the weeds. We've been out there quite a bit working with that. other projects, we're just trying to turn this into an outdoor learning opportunity for all of our schools. Barnes Butte just happens to be quite close where they can walk. And with that said, it's just been absolutely wonderful. The next slide shows a planning event that is almost complete. So for the last 2 years, we've been working on trying to determine a master plan for the site. We received a wonderful grant from the National Park Service, which paid for this project 100%. And we've worked with our schools, we've worked with the local community, we've had a couple of events out there trying to get community engagement, and hopefully within the next month or two, council will be adopting this. The master plan is really important so that we can go after grant funds to develop it. And we're just super excited to see this piece of property be protected, allow people to get out and recreate, and be there for generations to come. So really, really wonderful. Water's a big part of why we bought it. The educational component's a big part of why we bought it. But more importantly is maybe the transportation component. The next slide shows a project that we're currently working on that includes Barnes Butte. So right now, if the Public Works Department has to close down portions of Main Street, we're forced to detour people all the way around Barnes Butte, so like a 5-mile detour. And we really need to extend Combs Flat Road up to Peters. And I know, Steve, as mayor, this is a project that's near and dear to your heart as well.
It is.
Yep, very much needed.
It is in particular because we have the traffic on on North Main Street coming into town. And for the people that live up in North Ridge, Stone Ridge, that particular area, Deer Ridge, for them to get kids to the school, they have to come down Main Street and around Big Loop. It would be so much easier to be able to cut straight across on Peters Road and then down on Combs Flat to get to the school, the businesses on the east end of town, as well as the hospital. And then the other extent is to take the traffic that is on the north part of town and for them to be able to get across Peters Road, clear over to La Monta would be a godsend, again, to keep traffic minimized on Main Street. So, Eric, thank you for keeping that project up in the air, and the sooner we can be prepared for that, when we understand there may be some federal dollars available in the not too distant future, we'll have a shovel ready project to run.
Yep, that's really important. So we're working with the irrigation district, and we're beginning the design of the roadway section. So that would extend Combs Flat, as the mayor said, all the way to Main Street, across Main Street, and then down to Gardner Road, which would be wonderful. The irrigation district, we're helping them, and we'll design the piping of that canal. So that canal will just be underground, be adjacent to our new street. And that's important just because the canal's pretty, but it is so dangerous right now. It goes into a siphon, and we just don't want anyone to be hurt with that. So we're real excited, and we'll keep our fingers crossed about stimulus dollars coming in.
I noticed that when we were walking on the trail this morning, that there were a number of people walking the road alongside the irrigation canal, even though there is a sign telling people not to do that. But I guess that's the reality.
Yep. It's we don't want anybody to get hurt. So if you could stick to the trails, that would be wonderful. That's all we ask.
Another project you were instrumental on is the wetlands project. What can you tell us about the wetlands project now?
Wetlands project is another great place to go out and do your whatever social responsibly distanced recreation. So if you haven't been out to the wetland, man, head out there. It's beautiful out today. The address to our parking lot is 4035 Northwest Rimrock Acres Loop. So you just head down O'Neill Highway, and it's a couple miles out of town. So this project, we started it in 2016. This was It's actually part of our wastewater treatment plant. So we treat our wastewater. That's really important to know. We treat it before that water comes here. After the water's treated at our plant, it can either come to this area or go to the golf course. So this water that's going to the wetland is the same quality water that we use at the golf course. So it's already been heavily treated. Why we decided to do this was just a real cost-saving project, or cost savings was the big driver on why we wanted to do this. So the next slide kind of shows how we treated how we disposed of water previously and what we did. So the upper diagram shows a cross section of how we used to dispose of our wastewater. So you can see our pivot there, pivot irrigation. We could only irrigate at the agronomic rate. So that's the rate at which the water evaporates and at the rate at which the plants utilize that. You can see a cross section of the Crooked River, and the Crooked River had been very, very much channelized in that region. And so even in a 100-year flood event, it wasn't able to leave its banks. And so it wasn't very good habitat. And so what we did on the lower portion there, if we can look at that, was pull back the banks of the Crooked River and allow the river to wander. That's been great for the steelhead reintroduction effort. All of that soil that we pulled out of the riparian area of the river, we were able to utilize that to construct all of our ponds. And now we can essentially dispose of that water year round, where in the past we had to store the water all winter, irrigate it just during the summer, irrigate it right at that agronomic rate. Now we're just trying to supercharge that aquifer, that water, very cool, very clean water. We're actually hitting drinking water standards when the water leaves our property, pops up in the bottom of the Crooked River, and helps cool the Crooked River during the summer when it gets too warm. So the next little video here shows the actual construction of the facility. So this was the summer of 2016. We moved 400,000 cubic yards of dirt. So that's like 40,000 dump trucks full of dirt. The reason why we did that is we got a lot of great grants to make improvements to the river, and we very much raised the elevation of some of our ponds. So now we currently have no pumps in the system. It's all just gravity that moves the water around. And it's turned out just wonderfully. We've been very pleased with it. Took a few years for the plantings to come in, but they're looking good. We've planted a lot of different trees out there, and they should start popping up here in a little bit. And this next part, I like to tell people this is just your average summer day in our beautiful town of Prineville. So this is balloons over Prineville. We do this every July. And there where they came into our field and removed the balloon, that's about as quick as they do that. They don't want you to catch them on their field. But it's been great. It's been a good project. Once again, we engaged our school children. They helped us design 13 educational kiosks. So wonderful educational opportunity. And then the next little video shows us how well it's worked for the environment. So recently, steelhead and salmonid fish have been reintroduced into our city. These are threatened fish, so they catch you harming one, that's a $10,000 fine for each fish. We're really wanting to make sure that this is a successful effort. So what we're showing in this little video is that first summer, that water that we were adding was going through the groundwater table and pulling up in some of these little pools we'd made next to the Crooked River, and those are steelhead fry. So this was August, the river was too hot at the time, and those little steelhead fry were able to hide out in these pockets. And so after about 5 years of effort, I dang near cried that day when I saw the steelhead. So that's been just absolutely wonderful. Things you'll be watching, or that will be coming up at the wetland in the near future, is we're working with the first graders at Barnes Butte Elementary. They're all stuck at home, but we're going to try to do some remote education. The teachers and I are going to be planting some mallard hen nest boxes, and our wonderful IT team down here is going to put some cameras on them, and hopefully we can let the kids watch some little mallard ducks be hatched. I know that's probably not the right terminology, but I don't know much about birds. It's a wonderful place for birds out there. Just head out there when all of this craziness is over with. If you want, we have a nice golf cart. We can tour you through there if you'd like. If you're not terribly mobile, we can help with that. And yeah, just get out there and enjoy yourself.
But people are going out now, and it is available for folks to walk around as long as they respect the social distancing. But this is also a time of spring migratory passage of the waterfowl coming through. So it's a great place to go look at the spring birds coming in and through Central Oregon.
5.5 miles of trails, so you don't need to be next to anyone out there. There's plenty of room, so head on down there.
Eric, another project you're working on is the Aquifer Storage and Recovery, referred to the ASR project. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's a next big project that we've been working on. You've probably seen a lot of well drilling rigs up at the airport, and we're doing a lot of work down by the fairgrounds. So this next slide that we have kind of summarizes what we're doing. So that's a very busy slide. But if you look at it, you can see on the right-hand side, the red is the city of Prineville. And then as you look from the upper right to the bottom left, that's the state highway. So on the bottom side, that's Weibel's Corner down there. And what all those little dots are wells that have been drilled. So whenever a driller drills a well, he or she has to report back to the state as to what they've found. So water's tough in Prineville. Down on the valley floor, our wells don't produce very much. We get into a lot of like manganese and sulfur issues that are taste and odor issues. But at the airport, we had a well that just did amazingly well. But if you went very far away from it, there was absolutely no water. So you'd go from 1,000 gallons a minute to just absolutely nothing. And so what we started doing is looking at all of these different wells and trying to understand what was going on with the geology. And after reviewing a lot of the wells and drilling some of our own, we came up with a kind of a cross-section of what we think is going on up at the airport. So if we look at the next slide, that line that we're looking at that ran from Prineville to Weibel's Corner, it's now in your upper right-hand side. So the left-hand side of that would be out at Joe Weibel's place. You can see Grass Butte is there. There is absolutely no water in Grass Butte. And then over more in the center of that graphic shows those blue water-bearing zones. So just a ton of water there, very quickly recharge, a lot of capacity, but very, very narrow. So what we found is that that's actually an old fluvial channel of the Crooked River. We've done a lot of research on this. We worked with a young lady who did her doctoral thesis from Portland State on this project. And what we found is that 4.5 million to 5 million years ago, the Crooked River was actually located underneath where the airport currently is today. It laid down all of its deposits, so the cobbles, the sands, and then we had volcanic events come out of the cascades that essentially covered it up. But, you know, even when you see no water in a river, there's still water flowing in that river. It's just flowing underneath the ground in all the rocks and the sands and everything. And so that's why it's so productive. One of the things that we've started doing is we actually video our wells. So this next video shows what we find. So here on the top, that's your footage. So we're about 5 feet down. We're going through a steel casing. So when we drill these wells, we put a steel casing in to hold them open. Now we're down at the end of that steel casing, 485 feet below the airport. That's just some rust we knocked off of the pipe. No big deal there. At this, you'll be really shocked to see what you see. So you would not expect to find cobbles in this area. You know, you'd expect to find more of old formations, clays, maybe some lava, but it's astonishing. You look at the river rocks that are down there, and essentially the water's still flowing through those river rocks and all the voids. You can see different geologic events. We're going through kind of a tight area there. That was probably some ash that welded and then blocked the river up, and then it came down. But very, very interesting, and that kind of explains why the aquifer is so narrow. If you look at like Billy Chinook, how narrow that is, that's kind of what we're looking at. These rocks, we'd called them welded here. They got some ash in them, so somewhat productive, but in other areas they're not welded and very, very productive. Not sure if we can speed this up a little bit, but as we go down through here, you'll see that the materials become tighter and tighter as we go down. So just all of that pressure. These are older formations, and you can see just all of the, you know, the millennia of geologic events that happened as it gets tighter and tighter. You can see that that material's much more welded, but you can see how the water is moving through there, up and down and all around. In this well, I believe we took it down to 575 feet. But pretty interesting. This is a fun part of my job, is when we get to try to figure out things like this. So what we're going to do with this, if we can look at maybe our next slide, we'll show what our plan is for this aquifer storage and recovery project. So if we look at what water the city uses during the winter, we use less than 1 million gallons. During the summer, that can jump up to 4 million gallons. So the average, the average residential customer, they use about 4 times more water during the summer than they do for the winter. Our, you know, commercial industrial customers, some of those use 10 times more water during the summer than the winter. And so that's really tough when we're trying to provide water to all of our customers, because we have to have the wells and the treatment to meet that one day highest demand. But then all winter, it's just setting idle. You know, you're not making any revenue off of it. And so what we found, and we've done several tests on this, is because that old channel of the Crooked River is so confined, we can add water to it and pull the water back out. So if we add water into that aquifer, it essentially stays where it's supposed to stay. It's slowly moving, but it's moving at a rate of like 1.5 feet per day rather than 3 or 4 or 5 feet per second in our stream. And so all winter long, we can run our water treatment facilities and then store a little bit of that water to meet those very short but very high peak demands during the summer. So something that we're really looking forward to. The other part of this project is making that wet water. So next video shows all the work we're doing down by Les Schwab Park on South Main. This is where we're constructing a water treatment facility. So like I mentioned earlier, in the valley floor, we see a lot of sulfur in places, manganese. So it's drinkable water. It just has taste and odor issues. This facility will treat the water for those issues. Once again, this project's being funded by water system development fees. So this is not the existing customers. This is new customers paying for these costs. This project should be online this coming winter and will be ready to go for next summer, hopefully. So we're super excited about it. I think we have a little map of what the layout will look like. Parks and Rec has been wonderful letting us work in the Les Schwab field. So we have a series of a bunch of shallow wells. Like I say, that water you can drink. It just really doesn't smell good or taste good. We'll treat that, pump it all over to our water treatment facility, and then deliver it to all of our customers. So that's the next big project. If anybody wants more information, just give me a shout. I'd love to talk water treatment. But yeah, it's been great.
But a lot of this, as I understand, Eric, was a result of the legislation that we had passed back in 2014, when we were able to get 5,100 acre feet of water designated in the Prineville Reservoir for our use. And we keep that water in the river to mitigate what we pump out of the ground, so that water is available for fish and fish habitat. And we're not using that water directly. We're using it indirectly by pumping the water out of the ground into the aquifer storage and recovery. So,
yep.
Eric, thank you very much.
Yep, for sure. That's wonderful. That legislation also very much firmed up the water rights for our local farmers, that they're a big component of our local industry, and we're always working closely with our farming industry.
Well, Eric, thank you very much for sharing. I need to bring this to a close. These are tough times. They will continue to be tough times, and we will get through them. We will get back to normal, but it will be a new normal. It will take a lot of hard work. But thank you for doing your part in combating the spread of the coronavirus. And do me a favor, please call someone who is socially isolated. Call them. They need a friend, need to hear a friendly voice, and let them know that they're not alone. So thank you. Take care. Stay healthy, and we will see you next week. Thank you.